I'm Matthew, right? So I own Marble Creek Farmstead and Marble City Meats. We are a first generation farm in Sylacauga, Alabama, about an hour from Birmingham, 2 hours from downtown Atlanta. And we raise on our farm, on the 40 acres we have, we raise pork, chicken, duck, turkey, goat, lamb, sometimes rabbit, sometimes guineas, and Christmas geese, as well as egg layers and sometimes duck layers. So we have a lot of variety. We also will raise some beef on our farm. We'll finish steers, and then we have another farm located in Deatsville, which is about an hour away from us in the Prattville area, where all the beef's produced for our farm. And we also have one of the nation's only USDA inspected slaughterhouses on our farm, where we slaughter and process all those animals there under USDA inspection, as well as retail exempt, which will speak to one of your questions there, Darren, and then also custom exempt processing. So when it comes to processing meat, we've got a ton of experience there. Before the class started, we talked about the challenges with processing that we have found, and if we want to produce a high quality product, we've had to do a lot of the butchering ourselves. And I think that it's a big reason why we got into shipping meat was, when you raise everything in a regenerative nature, very labor intensive, you do all the butchering and processing yourself, you create a very high quality product that demands a premium, and shipping meat is a way to tap into a seemingly endless market outside of our local area, right? So let me pull up my presentation. Let's see.
Do you ship for others? Like if I brought a cow there to have it slaughtered, would you then ship that meat if I had an order?
No, we don't do that. Let me see if I can make this thing work. I'm used to having two screens, and I don't have that right now. So, okay, can we all see my deck? Perfect.
Good, yeah.
All right. So the first question with shipping meat is, should you, right? There's a cost, kind of a minimum cost and a minimum amount of shipping that I think makes sense for folks. Just like every activity on the farm, there's a cost associated with supplies to ship. And Charlotte, your question earlier, I think was really good about how do you line up the scheduling, right? So, in our case, we have a 20 by 20 walk-in freezer that we have all of our different meat products in boxes that we can pick orders out of, right? So if we get a shipping order in, we've got all of our meat set up in a way that I can easily go get 1 pound of chicken breast and 1 pound of ground beef and 1 pound of turkey thighs and whatever, right? Like I can get access to it. If you're like a lot of small farms and you're operating out of, a bank of chest freezers, that can get really challenging to try to set up just the logistics of picking your meat, right? So one thing that could work really well is if you had like an on-farm store and you have, glass door freezers and you've got your product set up for people to, then that would work really well to also ship meat out of. I don't think there would be any additional expense. I think that would be a way. So I'll share a little bit about kind of what we do and what our operation looks like. And then after that, I'll get into what some of the challenges are, right? And some things that people need to think through when we're thinking about shipping. So this is our website. As you can see, it's very consumer facing. We worked really hard on this. We get a lot of good, very positive feedback on it. It's very intuitive. People can find what they're looking for really well. We have a good click-through rate. This is a Shopify backend. And we manage all of our inventory here. We currently have a system called VistaTrack that we use for our label creation. It also puts our orders into inventory, and we'll update our website with products as we process. So as we take stuff into the butcher shop, it's going to actually put it, or in the processing plant, it'll put it into inventory here. It's got the capability to do that. That's expensive, but it can be very useful. And then we scan the products out into the boxes. It's functionality that we're able to do. We're not currently doing it because it's expensive and we don't have a need for it right now, but it's something that, you know, as we grow this part of our business, that we'll add on. So we've got the capability to do it, but it's a couple $100 a month fee that hasn't been worth it so far. This is our back end. So again, this is Shopify. You can see here, I've got a list of all the different products that we sell. You know, we do sell other farms products through our website. So we carry Wright Dairy's cheese, for instance, and Boundary Line, Buffalo, and some of Walden Pharmacy's tinctures, things like that. I've got an inventory area. If I'm not using the VistaTrack automated inventory tracking, then I can just go in and update the inventory. One thing I want to point out is, notice on this Boston butt that you know, I don't know exactly what weight it's going to be when I cut it, and I'm the butcher. I'm the one cutting it. So if you know, and I care about hitting my spec, but it can be really tough to cut a pork chop or a steak or anything and get it to fit a certain specification. And then that's with me doing the butchering myself. So if you're having to use another processor, which most people, you know, are, it's going to be even harder to get them to hit a spec. So there is one software system out there called GrazeCart, where people can go online, like their customers can go online and order, and then you, the farmer, can go in and update with like the accurate catch weight after the fact. So they place the order, it keeps their credit card on file. They order like a pork chop. The description would say it's going to be between 0.9 and 1.3 pounds, and then we'll bill you for the exact amount you get. But GrazeCart's the only solution that I've seen that does that. But it just wasn't ideal for our application for a couple different reasons. So really the only other alternative that I think most farmers have settled on is you just make these buckets. So in this case, we make a 1 pound bucket of, you know, different weight classes for butts. And then I'm going to set my price at the middle of this weight class. And then in theory, on average, you know, let's say I sell 100 butts in this 2.5 to 3.5 pound range over the year, well, half of them will be below and half of them will be above, hopefully. And so that may not be true, but I'm just going to make that assumption. And so then my price that I set is going to be around that $3 mark, right? So that's something that's key. But anyway, in this inventory, I can update what I've got available for customers to see to sell. When it comes to how we ship, so this is our shipping area. It's pretty small. You can see kind of over here, the walk-in freezer door. This is our 20 by 20 walk-in freezer. We can go in here. All of our products are stored in here on these green shelves on boxes. So we can go through and pick them. When we get an order, you know, we'll get a ticket like this. It's got all the different products somebody's ordered. We'll print that out, put it in the appropriate box. We use these liners for our application. We've used a lot of different companies, but this is the one we like for a few different reasons. This is a recycled denim liner that we use. So we like that. It fits kind of our sustainability goals. There are some other options that use like more green materials, but we haven't been able to get them at a price point that we can afford at this point, but we hope that we keep watching them. At some point we can. These are good, but they're not great. And I say that because with these liners, you get, if you use the proper amount of dry ice, you'll get 2 days on your shipping, but nothing more than that. Anything past 2 days, the meat will be defrosted, no question. So you're from the start, understand that we know how to send meat and get it there in 2 days, or we wouldn't use these, right? So I don't necessarily recommend that people start their shipping using this system. The name of the company is Cold Keepers. They're out of South Georgia. We drive there actually to pick it up, the liners from them. The shipping's really expensive. So we get a couple $1,000s worth of liners at a time whenever we buy them, a couple times a year. And the shipping's like $500 or $600 on that. So it's like a 9-hour round trip. So we just drive over there and get them. I can pay somebody, you know, $100 plus gas to do that. So it's cheaper than shipping them. The boxes we get from Uline, we used to get them from Anchor Packaging here locally, but the prices have really gone up on boxes, just like the prices on everything. So that's a challenge. What I would recommend, even though it's the least sustainable option, but for folks that are just getting started with shipping dries or with shipping meats, I would recommend using the styrofoam boxes to begin with. They're the most forgiving and will really help you with your mistakes. So, when you make your boxes, you really got to think about air leak, right? This thing could be sitting on a 110-degree truck, on a UPS truck on a August day, right, for hours or overnight. It can be in a really hot environment. And so even a small amount of air leak makes a big difference. Also, the integrity of your packaging is really key. You'll notice there's two different size liners here. This is a 12 by 12 by 12 cube, and this is a 12 by 12 by 24 box, right? Now on these bigger ones here, we actually, it's got like an adhesive on one side of this liner to close it in. But we actually take this and it'll kind of, when it's full of meat and you put it together, if you take it out of the box, it's kind of like a cocoon shape. We'll take tape and wrap it all the way around that cocoon shape to really make sure that this liner does not come open inside the box, because it certainly can. And if it does, it's going to create some air challenges. We also use an excessive amount of tape on the boxes, right? We tape every corner, every seam. We tape it across the top, across the side, across again. We really go nuts on the tape. And if you don't do that, what can happen, when someone's throwing your product around, if a box breaks open again, it's going to be really hard for that to maintain, a lack of airflow coming in. All of our boxes require dry ice to ship. We currently buy dry ice from Publix, right? So you can go to any Publix in the area. They'll have dry ice there. It's $1.60. I'll go to overpricing later, but it's about $1.70 a pound for dry ice. We will ship, the way our website is set up, we ship 2-day ground to about half the country, right? That's just UPS will ship 2-day ground to, about a half or third, somewhere between a third and a half of the country. Anywhere outside of that, we require our customers buy a second day air. So in our case, we do a $150 minimum order to get free shipping in our 2-day ground area. And anywhere outside of that, they have to pay second day air price. And we get an insane amount of second day air price to like Washington State or Oregon for like 2 turkey wings. It blows my mind. To that point, we also require that there's a minimum of 4 pounds of meat in a box. If you try to ship 1 pound of ground beef, it's just not going to get there froze. It's just not. You need a bigger amount of stuff. Ideally, it's 6 to 8 pounds. That would really be a good minimum to start. I wouldn't ship less than 8 pounds if you're new starting. I would just require that someone buy at least that much in order for you to make, to do a good job making sure it gets there froze. With the dry ice, you do want to put some kind of a barrier between the actual raw dry ice and the boundary of your product. So the plastic vacuum wrap of your product, for instance, because it's really, really cold and it can actually hurt your product if it is in contact with it. For your dry ice, for shipping, you want to put the dry ice on the top of the meat. So you put the meat in first and then you put the dry ice on top. We don't ship eggs. We've never been successful at that. There's just no way that we've seen to do it. We do ship cheeses and other things that need to be cold but not frozen. So we'll put those actually on the bottom so that they're not in contact with the dry ice. Because if they are, then they might hard freeze and that would be a problem, right? Let's see if there's anything else important for the boxes. So shipping for us, we actually only ship on Tuesdays. Now, it would be okay to ship on Mondays, but it's just, we also do Market Wagon and we do our store and home deliveries on Tuesdays. So we have to buy the dry ice in Birmingham and bring it an hour back to Sylacauga to pack everything. So we just make shipping on Tuesdays for that reason. It just works better from us from a flow perspective. We would never ship anything on any day but Monday or Tuesday though, right? So I highly recommend nobody ships anything on a Wednesday, and definitely don't on a Thursday. If it gets there, if it's late at all, it'll sit in the warehouse over the weekend, and there's absolutely no chance it's going to get there safe. So if we ship it on Tuesday, if it is late, it could get there, you know, Friday at noon, and it won't be frozen, but it might still be very cold, right? And our customer might be okay with it. That'll happen about half the time. So 100% of the time it's there over the weekend, it's going to be bad, right? So only ship on Mondays or Tuesdays. Also, UPS tends to perform better from our experience on those days. I think they just get a lot more weekend packages. FedEx is absolutely awful from our experience, right? So other farms do really well with FedEx. We have had nothing but significant pain with FedEx. All right, so a little bit more about our history. So we started with Ticktail, which doesn't exist anymore. It was bought by Shopify, and so it automatically converted to Shopify, which was great because Shopify is tremendously better. We had a WordPress farm site and a separate e-commerce site, the Ticktail. That was like the worst thing ever. Right before the pandemic happened, we actually combined them. So thank God we did that. As far as getting paid for this stuff, Shopify, we used to use Stripe, but Shopify payments with PayPal works really good for us, right? So we really like Shopify a lot. A lot of shipping meat programs do subscription versus an a la carte ordering system. We have a different kind of membership program. So in our case, people pay us up front and they get like a store credit to use every month. And that's been really successful for us. Our customers really, really like it a lot because they can choose what they get. But I do think there's a big opportunity for more subscription services. Like ours is unique. And so we can't really do the subscription service because we do the farm membership the way we do. But I think, you know, I don't know. I think there's like a whole bunch of people that would like a subscription service that we don't, you know, service, you know. Boxes, like I say, they're a major cost. You can get them cheaper though. You've got to buy in bulk. Uline's been good for us, but that's also storage. Like, I mean, as you saw, we don't really have a lot of room to store boxes. So Uline gets them to us the next day when we order. And that's worked out well for us. But you can really look around. There's places in Anniston that make boxes. Anchor Packaging could be a good option for you. Oh yeah, that reminds me. So when you look at boxes, there's a lot of different qualities in boxes. I recommend strongly you never get a single corrugated box. Always get a double corrugated. That's a lot of insulation in that extra layer of actual box. So that's your first line of defense to heat exchange. So definitely go with the double corrugated. I talked about the liners and the insulation. So dry ice, we don't get that many anymore. In the pandemic, we were getting about 75 to 100 orders a week. We're getting a good bit less than that now. When we're getting, if you get, you know, anywhere between 40 plus orders, it can make sense to get pelletized dry ice delivered to you. So you can call Airgas. There's a couple other companies, like gas companies, that will deliver dry ice pellets to you. So they'll basically bring like a big blue cooler and drop it off, you know, off of a truck at your place. And that dry ice will be good for 1 week, maybe 2 weeks. Sometimes you'll have some of it that'll make it 2 weeks. You don't have to store it anywhere because it's, you know, it's just dry ice in a box. Your freezer's pretty hot. Like a 0 degree freezer is hot for dry ice, you know, so you just leave it in a shady area and it can work well. We do, in terms of how much dry ice to put in it, it partly depends on what's in the meat, but our rule of thumb is that anything in Alabama gets 5 pounds. If it's in a contingent state, it'll get 8 pounds, and anything beyond that will get 10 pounds. And that's generally true for 8 pounds plus worth of meat. Now, if they've got 8 pounds of ground product, especially sausages, which are a high fat content product, you've got to use more, right? Fat will warm up way quicker than like meat. It just will. Not exactly sure why. I'm sure I can figure that out, but for whatever reason, the fat will get hot quicker. So you'll want to use a little bit more dries if you've got like fatty products in there. Whenever somebody gets things like a whole chicken or bone broth or anything like that that take a long time to defrost, I could get away with using less dries. If I was short on what I picked up that day, for instance, and I had an order that was heavy on like whole chickens and bone broths or chuck roast or whatever, then I could skimp a little bit on that order. In terms of insurance, this is a really tricky part. You got to really think through. The cost is the loss. What are you going to do if an order doesn't arrive, right? So you're the farmer, you raise this animal, you correctly, take it to a processing plant, you store it, you advertise it, you get a customer, you sell it, you ship it, you've done everything right, and it just doesn't get there. Whose fault is it, right? So let's say somebody ordered $500 worth of meat from you and that you shipped it to them. What happens if it doesn't get there? You've got to, if you're going to take on shipping meat, you've got to have your answer for what that looks like up front, because if you're a customer and you didn't get it, you're going to expect to get paid for it, right? You want your money back if you didn't get your product. That's reasonable. UPS is not going to pay you the value of the meat. They're going to pay you the shipping costs. That's it. That's all you're going to get back from them, if you can get anybody to answer the phone, which you can't. So the way we do it is we self-insure. We just take that loss whenever it happens, and we try to do things to make sure that we don't incur it, right? So there are some areas in New Jersey, for instance, that we don't ship to, just because our experience has been that route's really bad. So we've had customers that have had multiple challenges, like I'm sorry, if we ship to you and it doesn't get to you, we're not going to be responsible for it, right? So we don't ship the week of Thanksgiving. Last year, we stopped shipping about a week before Thanksgiving and didn't resume shipping until after the new year, because it was so bad. We're week to week right now, for instance, right? We're watching other people report about what their experiences are with UPS. I think it's really important that you think through that. So let's see, cost. So our boxes cost us for the 12 by 12 boxes, they cost us $2.16 a piece. Our liner for that is $6.50. The dries is $1.69 a pound. So depending on where we're sending it, you can see what that price point is. So we try to budget the 25% price for marketing expense and then count shipping under that. We often exceed that 25% of the total sale. And so the shipping can become a less profitable enterprise for us in that case. It's tough, right? Like, I think the economics of shipping are something you've really got to think through about whether or not you do it or not. It's very easy. Of course, there's no such thing as free shipping in the world, right? It's always going to cost somebody something. A lot of farms increase their prices to cover shipping on online sales. That wasn't really an option for us because we sell so much of our product locally in Birmingham. Like we do home delivery. So, we use the same website for home delivery as we do for shipping. And so because of that, we wanted our prices to be the same no matter where we sell it. But we had to charge for shipping more because of it, right? We can't really hide the cost on our website, right? So we, we've had to try to adjust for that, but I think we're going to have to go up pretty soon on our shipping costs, just because the actual cost of shipping itself has gone up. So UPS is charging more, boxes are more, liners are more, dries is going to have shortages. That's one thing too. So every week we gamble with dries. Like, there's been a significant CO2 shortage worldwide over the last 6 months. And so there are weeks, we've only had 1 week where we didn't get our order shipped because of we couldn't find dries. But we've often had to go to like 8 different Publixes to find enough dries, or try to convince Airgas to make us to get through the week. So it can be a really stressful part of your business as well. So that's one thing to consider. You can do all this work and be ready to go and get all these orders and not be able to ship them because of a shortage, because dry ice is hard to find. We have tried to use gel packs. Some people will tell you can ship with gel packs, but we have not been successful with that. I think maybe if you were in Vermont or something, you might could get away with that, but in Alabama, it's not happening. You're not shipping out of here with gel packs. You can't ship with like ice either. It's going to melt, it's going to break, and you're going to have a wet package, and they're going to throw the UPS will throw it away, right? So we've tried some of that too. We've done like really thick ice blocks that we hard froze, and we've double vacuum sealed them, thinking that would be sufficient, but it's just not. There's a farm that I know of that bought a couple of lab freezers that get to like negative 200 degrees, right? They're for like laboratory samples and stuff. They bought them used. They were expensive, but he doesn't buy dry ice, and he ships all over the US. He says the meat will, so he doesn't use any ice, right? He just freezes the meat to like negative 200 before he ships it. And he says it'll last for 4 days like that in the same kind of shipping setup that we have. So I haven't done it myself, but that may be an option, in a more rural area where you just don't have that kind of access to dry ice that like we have pretty close to Birmingham. If someone really wants to know about that, they can feel free to email me and I'll put them in touch with that farmer. One thing I want to spend a little bit of time on is this, where I talk about this last point that I've got up here, this cost to acquire customers. It's really tough to ship online as a business, right? If that's a business that you're trying to focus on, because there's a ton of venture capital money in this. Like you've certainly heard of ButcherBox, or Porter Road, or Crowd Cow, or any of the myriad of different companies that sell meat to consumers online via a shipping model. A consistent problem in this business, and it's the same in restaurants and it's the same in grocery stores, is there is a very strong profit motive, which you understand, but these guys are they're going to start with a high quality farm produced product, acquire a bunch of customers that are used to that will come because they want to buy local, well-raised, well-farmed stuff. Then they'll find a much cheaper greenwash version of what they were buying before, and then sell it at a little bit less of a price, but make a much bigger profit. We've had that happen to us as a farm a couple times with some of those guys. I'm not going to say who, but we've seen it happen with lots of other farms as well. All that to say, conventional agriculture and venture capital have a vested interest in capturing the online meat sales market, right? So it's if you go on Facebook and you do any kind of Google searching anywhere for meat online, you're going to get bombarded with marketing ads of buying meat from whoever. And half the time it'll look like a legit operation, and it's not, right? It's just like in the grocery store, right? It'll be one farm, one large conventional brand has 5 different farms, right? And you're competing against that. You're competing against a venture capital funded operation that it can afford to buy market share, right? So it can do it at a loss. So we got into a place where we were really shipping a ton of meat, but when I finally looked at all the numbers on it, we were paying so much to the advertising firm to get our name online to acquire those customers, and the retention rate on those customers was the customers I was able to get that way was kind of poor, and so we shut that part of our business down earlier this year because the space is just really competitive and not one that we found to be really useful. So we went to like our own managed Google AdWords approach, which is a lot cheaper. It's a couple $100 a month. And we have a lot less shipping, but a ton more profitability, right? So, I think that can be an approach that can really work for folks. So anyway, that's a lot. I don't know if anybody's got any questions on anything I shared. Happy to answer anything.
Kristen had a question earlier about OSHA or EPA regulations on holding that dry ice on the farm.
I'm not aware of any. I mean, we don't really hold it because we go and, I mean, I guess if air gas dropped it off, there might be some that you'd have to worry about, but I'm not aware of them. I don't know that I would worry about it myself. Maybe I should, but you know, I deal with USDA enough, and that's sufficient for me.
And do you have thoughts on Sweetgrove, Alabama for marketing?
Well, we're a member. We use it on our marketing for the products we sell in the Piggly Wigglies in Birmingham. I think that program is a good. I think there's some positive things about it, and there's some things that could use some work, probably, like most things. I don't know if that's a direct enough answer or not, but there's opportunities for improvement. I promise you, I'm advocating for those internally as I see them.
My question is more from a consumer standpoint about, do you have recommendations on how we can find a local farmer that does maintain quality for, instead of going to Butcher Box, like how do we find you if we don't already know?
Well, it's marblecreekfarmstead.com right now. I mean, like every other thing, know your farmer, right?
Yeah.
Do some research. Ask yourself, am I seeing this? You know, when you go to Butcher Box or Crowd Cow or Porter Road or any of these places, what's the farmer's name? You know, can you call the actual farmer and talk to them? Can they talk to you about how they raise their animals? Because if you can't get in touch with that person that does it, maybe they're too big, right? I don't know. That's my personal feeling, right? So, I mean, we've sold to lots of those places before, but if you can buy directly from the farmer, I think that's great. So, I've tried to work with other entities to set up a larger processing and shipping co-op. We haven't been successful at that yet, but we'll keep digging at it.
In the face of so many shortages, do you have alternatives for the raw materials and processed items, the boxes, the wraps, the packaging, in case the continued supply chain disruptions and shortages occur?
Yeah, no, I mean, not really. You could, like, so for instance, you can get bulk styrofoam. That's a thing you can get in the world, and you can cut it to fit a box. So you can make your own coolers, as an example. That's the thing some people do. You can line it with aluminum foil and line that, and that works out really well. I mean, boxes, I think you could use any box from anywhere. So it's not like you have to have a special box. It just needs to be a box that is going to have integrity. But I think if it got too hard for us, we just stopped doing it, right? Like we do it now. It's our highest. So I guess I should back up too. So we sell in the Piggly Wigglies. We do the farmers markets. We do a lot of home delivery. We have a big CSA program, and online shipping is still as big as everything else combined, right? Sales wise. So we still sell a ton of meat online. It's really a high revenue business for us.
Really cool. I'm looking for any other questions. I'm learning so much today.
I guess I'm curious just about going back to types of freezers. Like, say you're like just kind of getting into this, or I don't know, are there certain brands of freezers that you like the best? Things that you look for in a freezer? Yeah.
So walk-in freezers, you know, it's really challenging to get servicing on those.
Okay.
So there are combined units you can buy. So it's a walk-in freezer that's got the condensing unit on the top. So those are small though, generally, but if you don't have like a large operation, those can work just fine. If you're doing a store freezer, I mean, I think the True brand freezers are really great. You can get, so Dollar General, as ubiquitous as it is, also updates it a lot. They change out their inventory a lot. So there's all these right now, and for the last year or two, there's been like 1 million Dollar General 2 or 3 year old True brand freezers that are available like everywhere, right? And they're pretty affordable, and they're super high quality. True's a really good brand of freezer for the glass door freezer. So I highly recommend those. You can just go on Facebook Marketplace or go on Craigslist or whatever, and you just type in glass door freezer and you'll see tons of these. They'll say, they'll be yellow on the top, they'll say frozen foods, and that's a Dollar General freezer, and it'll be a True brand, and those are all really reliable. So we bought a lot of those.
Okay. That's good to know. Yeah. And I was also just curious about like planning for, I mean, what happens in power outages and like backup generators and like
Yeah.
that kind of thing.
Yeah, so we have a 50 kilowatt diesel powered, or excuse me, propane powered generator that we got out of one of the large chicken houses that closed down.
Okay.
But we use that for a processing plant. So we have to have that because, like, especially when we're not processing meat for other farms right now. But when we're doing that, you know, I might have like 15 cows and 30 pigs of other farmers' animals hanging in my cooler, and if I have a power outage, I can't let that stuff go bad, right? So you really can't have a processing plant and not have a backup generator. So yeah, I mean, you absolutely, I think if you're going to be in the business of storing meat, you should have a backup generator, right?
For sure.
For sure.
Okay.
A model that could work on that, and I'll just say is there is cold storage you can rent. Like there's like a cold storage facilities like in Birmingham where you can pay a monthly fee and like leave a couple pallets of meat there, right? I think you pay by the pallet. So you could have an on-farm store that had like 3 or 4 chest freezers that were kind of your backup inventory. And then you could have like a couple of the glass door freezers that you kept super stocked. And then, once every couple of weeks, go and resupply from your cold storage. That could be a somewhat efficient model that could work for you.
Okay, that's really helpful. My last question just had to do with like trips to get materials for shipping. You mentioned that you had to go to, I forget, a couple hours
Georgia,
away.
yeah, South Georgia, 9-hour round trip.
9 hours. Okay, 9 hours to South Georgia. Just how do you, when you have a finite amount of those materials on the farm, what's been your best like record keeping for like making sure you don't get into a position where you're needing to go on another 9-hour trip to fill orders for like the next day or something like that?
Yeah, I mean, that's true for us. So we have a production farm that's raising, 9 or 10 species of animals at a time. And then we have a processing plant that's processing 9 or 10 different species, making 300 different SKUs. And then you've heard all the different ways that we fulfill stuff. So that problem is true across our business, right? Like running out of feed, running out of oyster shell, running out of goat mineral, right? Like running out of 6x12 5 mil vacuum bags, nitrates, things like that. Like there's probably about, I don't know, 700 or 800 products like that we can't run out of. So we keep a really strong running inventory. Like everybody that works for us, we always kind of know where we are. We have a board in our plant where people put anything that's getting low on there. And we work really hard to stay overstocked. We have a shipping container that we use just for storage of excess stuff, just so that we like have a place that keeps, so that will store that stuff. We got it before those are really expensive now. So we got ours for like a couple $1,000s. I think they're probably like closer to $6,000 or $7,000 now, but it's just, I don't know what to tell people to do, right? Like it's super expensive. But that's what we do currently. And we use every nook and cranny in our buildings to store as much stuff as possible. So, we run somewhat lean, but we try to have enough on hand of everything to last us at least 2 or 3 weeks.
Okay, thank you.
Kristen asks, where do you see your business growing?
I don't know. That's assuming that I do see it growing, Kristen. Honestly, I'm not sure. We were having this conversation before. A real challenge in regenerative sustainable agriculture today is consumers are getting bombarded with more and more sophisticated greenwashed messages from industrial agriculture, right? It makes it really hard to differentiate between what I would call an authentically local, sustainably raised product and one that approximates that, right? They make incremental changes to conventional growing systems and call them sustainable or regenerative or whatnot. So I'm not positive our business will grow from a production of meat perspective, right? We may actually maintain the size we are now or get a little smaller. I'm not sure, right? I know we're doing a lot more education, right? We just did we had 80 students in a butchery class over the last couple of weeks and over the next few weeks. And, we may do a lot more education as a business as opposed to continuing to grow the sales. For us personally, the only place that we are focused on growth right now is in the grocery store setting. And there we're trying to move up the value chain. So we actually recently received the value added producers grant from USDA to do deli meats and snack sticks. So, we're working on doing an extension on the plant right now to allow us to do that ready to eat product. So it has to be past the non-contact surface listeria testing, which is really challenging. But we've also started to do charcuterie. So, things like salamis and pepperonis and copas and guanciales and things of that nature. And so moving up the value chain where our price points are competitive, more closer to competitive with conventional agriculture, I think is what makes sense for us. But we also have our, I think we have our own process and plant and have sophistication with food production. I think that's really challenging for other farmers to access, right? So I'm not sure for smaller farms where their growth will come from, if it will come, frankly. I'm not necessarily optimistic that it will. Did we lose Darren? Just like we did, didn't we?
We did. He texted me. He had a meeting with a USDA guy. So
shoot, I hate that I didn't get to answer his question.
Well, I think you still can, and we can, because remember, this is being recorded, so we can share that knowledge.
All right.
I'll report back to him.
Yeah. So one thing I talk about a lot is if I had it to do over again, what would I do different, right? USDA just committed $500 million worth of capital to small processing to help alleviate some of the problems discovered during the pandemic with access to meat processing, right? They had a public comment section, and I'll just basically share what I made in the public comment. What I've added to that proposal as a comment. So our land grant institutions and ag schools all have USDA meat facilities on their campuses, right? They have slaughter plants for red meat, and some of them have poultry slaughter as well. And that is a typically privately funded and somewhat public funded facility, but they're on a public institution. So what makes sense, but they're only utilized a couple days a year, right? Whenever they're doing classes for their students, it's not like they're using these things day in and day out. So my suggestion to USDA was to take that money and create a network of nonprofit slaughter plants in these institutions, in these schools. So that money would just fund the creation, setup, and expertise building so that they could be self-funded but nonprofit slaughter plants that small farmers could have access to. Because it's the slaughter portion that's the problem, right? It's slaughtering animals and making the infrastructural investments that make it not make a lot of sense financially. They could also pay for, a couple refrigerated trucks to go with each school that could move carcasses from the school back to the farm. Farmers like myself could build a butcher shop, a USDA inspected butcher shop, which is much, much less infrastructure and a lot less oversight from USDA because it's the slaughter piece, no oversight, but just less, right? Less cumbersome. Farms could operate under the retail exemption, which it means you can sell it anywhere in the US. There is no inspector, there is no HACCP plan. You just have to maintain your sanitary records that show that your facility was clean before you started working and that you kept it clean while you were working. That's the only record keeping required. As long as you control the point of sale, so it's your store, if you have a little grocery store or a farm store, if you're going to a farmer's market or if you're selling online, as long as you control the point of sale, then you can make any product you want and sell it. So, charcuterie, cooked products, smoked chickens, you can cut pigs. They just have to start with an inspected carcass, right? So as long as it's killed under inspection, you can do all the butchering, all the bacon making, all the smoking, all the whatever you want to do to it, without having to go through the hoops of being USDA inspected and sell it to whoever you want. You just can't sell it wholesale, right? But that same facility could still produce things that were under inspection for wholesale. It would just have to, have days where it did that. So anyway, that's what I think would be the best use of that money that's out there. So short of that, I think it makes sense I think the small farms are going to have to do this. So I had in my butchery class, a lot of the people that are coming are thinking about starting their own plants or trying to figure out how to do this on farm themselves. And the problems we have today with meat processing are getting worse, not better, right? A lot of those plants utilize low-wage labor. A lot of the inputs are seeing significant inflation. The cost to build these things new now is really higher than what will allow someone to recoup their investment for, honestly, like to build it new. And a lot of the owners of these facilities are aging out, right? Just like the farmers are. So, we stopped processing for other farms because it just wasn't a good business anymore, right? Like in order to be competitive in the labor market, we'd have to pay people, which is, I have no problem paying folks, but then I've got to charge enough to cover that labor, right? And that means farmers have to pay more. And that means they have to raise prices to consumers. And that's not going to happen, So the problem with small is that it always has to be related to the big guys, right? And it's like, I think something I say a lot is that I don't care what you do to your chicken. I mean, it can live in a gold house and you can feed it diamond dust. Consumers aren't going to pay more than about 5 times what it costs to get it in conventional. They're just not. I don't care what you do. And you'll get some people that will, but not nearly enough to sell a batch, to even sell a batch of it. And I think other farmers I've talked to across the country see the same thing, right? It's just at some point, the price differential is just too high. So that kind of creates like an artificial price ceiling on what you can charge, or a very real price ceiling, which then creates a price ceiling on what you can pay for processing, because it costs what it costs to buy feed. It costs what it costs to buy baby chicks or baby pigs or whatever. And there's, materials. I mean, everything costs what it costs, right? So if you start trying to, you can't just raise price. Not every business can just raise prices indefinitely, right? At some point, the business no longer works, right? So the inflationary pressure and this is really the key concept here, right? The inflationary pressure has a bigger impact on small farms than it does on big farms, or the Tysons of the world, right? Yes, inflation hurts them, but not at the same ratio that it hurts us, right? And so because of that, we're losing more and more. And so my prediction is that small processing plants, devoid of the government intervention that's coming, small processing plants will go out of business pretty significantly over the next 18 months, right? Now we'll see what USDA does with that money that they've allocated. They could do some real good, but my indications that I've seen are that they're going to basically spread it out in a way that waters down the impact to like a piece of equipment for most small plants, which is not going to make a difference. It's not going to make a significant difference. So I'm less optimistic about the state of small processing than I am about growth potential for farms, right? So I highly recommend that anyone who's serious about running a meat business learns how to butcher themselves and starts to understand how the retail exemption works and really see whether or not that would make sense for their operation. I mean, and the basis of it, if you're paying anywhere north of $25,000 a year for butchering services, which if you're raising any kind of decent amount of meat, you are, it pencils out that you should just put your own retail exempt, because it's just like a one-room building. It's not even like it's a big building, right? It's one thing. One room, it's got a cooler in it. There's a bathroom somewhere within 250 feet of it that an inspector can use. The real kind of thing that holds people back is that it has to be hooked up to a septic tank that's approved by the health department. Some counties won't write you that letter. They just won't. And some will. Some will tell you have to go through ADAM, which is a really impossible task, and another $100,000. Some counties won't, right? So maybe that's something ASAN can help with. I don't know. But tell Darren to call me if he wants to talk about it further, or anybody really. I'm happy to help anybody that wants to investigate it.
For sure. Yeah. I'll tell him and others.
That's all I got.
Yeah, if there aren't any other questions, I'm not going to go ahead and walk us out. Just a big round of applause for Matthew. Thank you so much for being with us today. Thank you so much for sharing all this wisdom. I mean, the breakdown that you had of cost, input, and just being real about the work that needs to be done to make it happen, and how responsive you are to, like, in real time seeing what works and what doesn't work with shipping, like who you should be using in any given week for shipping. That was just so great. So thank you so much. I'm just going to take a moment to plug ASAN membership. This year, ASAN has deepened our commitment to being values-driven, farmer-centric, member-led, I was about to say Marble Creek, grassroots network. We're strengthening our collective muscles to address the most pressing challenges farmers and aspiring farmers are facing: access to capital, access to land, environmental threats, and more. To do this work, we have been undergoing a membership scale-up to build the just and resilient food system we all desperately need, and which our children's children deserve. And we need farmers to link with non-farmers to demand and create change. And there's a place for you in this movement, so become a member today. There's also going to be a livestock roundtable on Thursday, so I encourage you to check that out. That's going to be really great and a great way to connect with other livestock farmers. So thank you so much. Big round of applause for you, Matthew. We know you're in California right now, so we're sending you some Alabama charm out there, and hope you have a good rest of your day, everybody.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.